Hey folks, welcome to another look at the new features in Worldographer 2025. I'm the creator of the program, Joe Wetzel, and we are currently crowdfunding Worldographer 2025. You can get a full demo downloaded there, and we'll have a link in the comments below here to that demo, to the crowdfunding page where you can pick up the demo. I would encourage you to try it out, and we're going to continue showing these icon or different features of Worldographer throughout the campaign. Today we'll make 6 of 6, so I'm going to pat myself on the back over that. We are going to go over feature or the configuration, all the different configuration options in Worldographer, whether it's configuring your the features, the terrain, textures, labels, shapes, grids, numbering, data for generating the cities and worlds and so forth. And we'll see how quickly we can get through it all, but most of it is on the configure menu up here. If you go to configure terrain, I should point out you can add custom terrain features and textures with these buttons as well as the configuration folders. I encourage you to look for the videos that we've done on those things or the instructions on our website to get that. And we'll make mention of that shortly. That's why I'm mentioning it now. Configure terrain, though, is where we'll start, and this just prompts us, hey, what type of terrain are you trying to configure, because that helps us narrow it down and make the window or the list not be too huge. So we hit continue there, and this gives us this dialog here, and expanded some. But yeah, so you can see all of the terrain that is classic, since that's what we picked. That's installed in the program. You can add a new row by going to add row, and then it will give you a field to type in a name as well as all these other values too. But we can change the background color. So for example, if we wanted to change this cultivated farmland color to be, maybe it's fall, and it's our crowdfunding ends in October 9th or October 8th rather, I think. And it's getting to the middle of September now. Not quite fall. We're almost there. It's my favorite season of the year, to be honest. But anyway, so we'll make an orange colored for cultivated farmland. You could also remove the image. You could change the image. This will just bring up a file chooser. You can change the size of the image relative to the width of a hex in percent. And then elevation really only gets used in the tool for your rivers in particular. So when it's creating a river, automatically it looks at the height of the hexes and it generally tries to go downhill. That's not a hard and fast rule though, because each of those values is kind of is an average. So of course it could be picking low points to go through a hex that's higher than the previous hex that the river was on. But these are also randomized. So you might have something that's 940 and another one that's 1,080 feet. And yeah, by default we're thinking feet for these. The terrain also around the hex also will make an impact. If you have a bunch of mountains around there, then that might be then it's going to be over 1,000 for sure, and it could get to 2,000 even. Similar terrain is just other terrain types that are similar, and you want to have an option to potentially add those as well. So it could be just having plain farmland, and in addition to the cultivated farmland, there might be a light forest dropped in here and there, depending on that. You can scroll through all of these to pick those options. Reset will reset it back to the original, and remove will remove that terrain from the tool. I discourage you from removing the default terrain, particularly the really basic things like the farmland and the light forest and mountains and so forth. That would cause the generators to potentially run into problems. And then we can hit apply and close, and then I can go to the terrain drawer here, and sure enough, there's our cultivated farmland, and we've got our actually almost brown color, let alone orange. All right, so that's that one, and then we can move on to configure features. And again, this is asking us for what type of features do we want to mess with. We're going to actually do battle mat because there's an extra nuance with the battle mat ones that the other ones typically don't use. Continue, and that brings up this dialog. So here, you've got what the name of the terrain type is. Again, you can do add row to add another one. And then what icon is it using? You can choose the file for that. What's the size? So we're going to probably be resizing these when we move to the new user interface, the new library that we're using, the new look and feel, I guess is the best way of describing it, that we're using. Some of these widgets are a little bit wider and such, so we'll probably be expanding these a little bit so that you can see the actual size. Right now, you've got this is 130% of a hex width wise. The alternate icon is something that's different, where we've got a simple style, so you can toggle a battle mat into a simple style, and then it will replace any of the icons that it has set up with this simple style icon instead. So you can have kind of a black and white map that's kind of more designed for the GM's use behind the screen, and not a 1 inch per square battle mat, if you will. And so if you want to choose that file, if you want to change that file, you can hit that button and it pulls up a file chooser. Reset just resets the row to what was there, and reset to the original, and remove if you don't want that in the tool anymore. Moving on, configure textures is really easy. This is really just what file is the texture and what size is it. The thing to know is that 300 pixels is what we're doing as kind of the default width of a hex. So, oftentimes 300 makes sense, but for just legacy reasons, we've got a lot of these at 174 and 299. They kind of got added in when we were doing the isometric icons, and that was doing something with 174, so that's why that's there. But if you want to change it, you can change it here. Okay. Next up is label styles. So for this, I'll actually do another new label style here. Add a row and put in, a style. And we can pick our color that the font. This is going to be looking at all the fonts that are installed on your computer, and pull up that list, and so you can pick whatever you want. Broadway is a little bit different, so we'll be sure to notice the difference. We can make the color, let's go with like a dark purplish thing, and we're going to give it a white outline, but what I like to do for the outlines is I like, it may or may, actually at larger sizes, I don't think this makes a difference, but at smaller sizes, you don't want the outline to be, too big relative to the size of the rest of the text. So I like to set that to be about half or so when I do use an outline. Sometimes I don't, but sometimes it helps because, if you've got a map where you've got parts of it that are using bright colors and parts that are using dark colors, having an outline helps. And then do you want that to be bold or italic? Do you want to give it a background color? This will give put a rectangle basically centered behind it, so that, again, if you've got a map with all different shades behind, that helps your label to stand out. So hit apply and then hit close. And then we can go over to labels, and here we can pick a style and my text and put this on the map. And like I said, yes, it definitely is distinctive. So, and you can see already that you've got that outline there to it as well. Continuing on, settlement data. This is all about the data that's used for generating a city or a village. And we've already kind of overridden, I was kind of working with this a little bit before, doing a rehearsal for the video, and I didn't clear out the prior data. So you can clear out the prior data and you can load in a preset. So if we want our defaults, these are all now built into the tool. So this is new in 2025. Most of the stuff that I've shown you is not new to 2025, but this is. Previously, you had to have a configuration file, and you had to use the load and save configuration file buttons in order to bring that information into the tool, so it would know, how many of these different types of buildings to put into the city and so forth. But now we have all of these basic ones built into the tool. We also, because we were doing that, we basically tripled the number of icons in these other sets that we have. So like modern city icons, like top-down buildings, we only had 8 or so of them. Now we've got, I think, 25. And similar for all these other styles. Future Clean is kind of our Star Trek-y style. Futuristic Gritty is kind of our cyberpunk Blade Runner type style. Retro is our Buck Rogers-ish style. And then we've also got a Western set that are built into the tool. And again, some of our icon sets also have additional configuration files that you can use, and you can hit load configuration to do that. Also, if you make a bunch of changes and get this just the way you want, then you can hit save configuration. I'm actually going to switch this to post-apocalypse instead. So hit OK, reopen that dialog, and see what all the values are. So now we've got all the post-apocalypse stuff, and because I hit clear the prior data, that's the only stuff that's there. We do need to talk about the other tabs here, though. We've got building details, and so these are the different buildings, properties of the buildings, things in the buildings, people and things for sale. And it auto-generates those as well. So I can go to Post-Apocalypse Cafe, and I can edit, the people that are, the patrons that are there, the people that are working there, as well as what did they have for sale and what the prices are and so forth. So I've got all that information set up. And again, because we updated the UI, we need to kind of go back and resize some of these things so that they're able to be fully seen. So that'll be coming before we do the final release. The demo is an alpha. Next up is races, so not that interesting for the post-apocalypse one, although I guess we could put in, zombie or whatever other type you want to have. But here you can spell out what, if you've got humans and elves and dwarves and such, and then what languages do their names pull from, so built into this set, we've got an English set of names and a Spanish set of names, which we'll get to in a moment. And then and if we wanted to add another row, so if we wanted to add, the zombies, we can add a row, and it will give us more another row of all these same selectors for that. Other info, this is important. So we have post-apocalypse house for remaining buildings. So that's just saying, hey, that generator, that building placement here, I kind of glossed over this, but yeah, so it's going to put down a cafe for every 400 people. So if I have a population of 4,000 people, it's trying to place, if there's 4,000 people, it's trying to place 10 cafes in town, and it's going to try to put them on the road. And it's not a farm, and it can be placed anywhere. So there's a notion of, trying to place them in the nearest or further away than 12 hexes or whatever number you want to set, but these are right now set to 12. So in this case, like the factory is going to be at least 12 hexes outside of the center of town. Dense doesn't really get used at the moment, and then remove, if you don't want that in the data or in the city that gets generated, you can hit remove. Anyway, back to this. So once it places all of those buildings that are picked based on, you've got to have one of these for every 400 people or whatever. That might give you, 40, 50 buildings, or maybe even 1,000 if you have a very large population that you're trying to put down. But there still might be another, 80 or 100 buildings that it needs to do to hit the population that it's going for. Or in the case of a very large city, it might be need another 1,000 or 10,000 buildings. So this is what types, and this would be comma separated. So if we had the built-in icons, there's really only going to be 2 or 3 post-apocalypse houses, and it's going to use the same couple throughout. But you could have in a couple of different building types. Now, if they're just post-apocalypse house A, B, C, D, you don't need to enter each of those separately. It's going to name match as best it can, and if it only varies by that ending of A, B, C, D, no big deal. It's going to do that. It's going to use those automatically. But if you want to put in, larger, if you want to put in mansions, if this is if you want to have a much ritzier area, you could switch that instead. This other information gets used for generating the people. So what they're, if they're an adventurer type, what's their background, what are their occupations, some quirks about them. And then we've got some naming conventions. So we've got two, yeah, building, yeah, so we've got a couple of different types that could be named. Right now we've got the cafe and the fast food are set up at the moment. But you could, and then those could mention coins, for example, and it would use one of these one of these words randomly in the name, where you could say, you know, the coins and coins, and it might come out with the coppers and silvers, you know, etc. Okay, so I think we covered all of this one now. And then this next one's also going to be a little bit detailed too. World name data. Here, we want to have, you know, what languages are installed in the system at the moment. And again, we've got load and save configurations, so that if you come up with something that you really like and you've tweaked a bunch of stuff, you can save it and you can reload it later. But these are a bunch of different names that naming conventions that are set up, and so this is it's got a section for location naming, and so you have a couple of construction rules where it's going to take these syllables, and it might take, you know, the prefixes 1 and 2. So it's going to take a prefix and then a word from 1 and a word or a syllable from 1 and one from 2. And the same thing for person naming, where it's going to look at these lists. Like, so the person naming in this case is very simple. It's just looking at the list and it's just randomly picking one. So that's what that's all about. Feature information. So this is all of details about all the different things in all the different features that get placed onto the map, I should say. So if you're placing a castle, this is going to, you're going to get some generated details about that castle. And so this is driving that. A city, it's right here, and this is driving all the details of a city. You can remove one from the list or from the tool if you want to, and then it won't generate that anymore. You can also add a new feature type, and it will give you the fields in order to allow you to set up a new feature type if you prefer. Now, there's also world information. So here we've got different religions that it might generate, and what the different domains might be, and you can add another domain. And based on the domain, what could be some of the symbols that it uses to signify the religion. Cultures. So this is just a list of. This feeds the bullet points that get used to generate a culture in the world and name data stuff. And then encounters. Encounters. This is your hex crawl detail stuff. And so, you know, any land, and so you might have, you know, a building pyramid, and it's a feature, and that just means, well, that's going to be driven by the feature information. But settlement ruins, it's not using feature information. It's just going to use, you know, whatever's here, and it's going to customize it. These brackets signify it's going to randomly pick one of these values that are comma separated in the brackets. And that's all of the, oh, and yeah, so you can also control if it's a medium, minor, or major feature. So close. Let me show those though. I'm going to pull up the city. So if I hit these yellow squares are notes, you can turn those off here. But if I do pull up a note, and so here's all the information about this particular city. Affluence, why it was founded, and government, what the population is, and so forth, attractions, and it's all fully editable. If you don't like that, you can regenerate it, or you can make it all again from scratch. The world data, I should point out too, since we were talking about that, showing that how that's set up. Here's where you have a number. Yeah, there we go. Don't know why don't know why that wasn't opening, but here's where, you know, you've got a nation, and it just gives you a couple bullet points. Here's a culture, and then we've got religions, and so here's a number of religions in the world. Okay, Now, two more configurations that we need to show that aren't up there on that dialog. One is here, and this is configuring your grid. And do you want to change the color of your grid? Do you want to change the thickness? If you've got multiple map levels going on, do you want to, what's the thickness of the map above? Sometimes you do want to see the outlines of the larger hexes from the map level above. And if you do, you can control that here. You can set it to 0 if you don't want to see it. You can use a square grid. By default, the battle mats do use a square grid. But otherwise, do you want a square grid on the map? And we can just let's show that for a brief moment, and we can change the color. Let's set the color to be some kind of a blue just for the heck of it. Hit OK, and that's what you get for that. Let's go back. Let's set it to no, and turn that off. Oh, one other thing. Yeah, so we've also got some offsets. So if you wanted to offset those upper level grids when you're seeing things, you can offset it as well. Numbers is the next to last thing that we're going to show. This is your numbering and what font gets used, what color gets used for the numbers on the hexes. Of course, this checkbox needs to be on to show them, just like this checkbox needs to be on to show the grid. What size do you want it to be? Do you want the numbers to be on the top, middle, or bottom? Let's change a couple of these things. Let's leave that as is. Let's change the separator to a dash. Let's do no padding. And let's change our font to, well, something different, but isn't too, let's see what that looks like. Hit OK. There you go. So that gives you a feel for how that gets changed. And the last thing to show is a little bit of configuring, if you will, with shapes, where you can set up your shapes drawer to be however you want. If you've got an idea in mind that I want my walls to be a particular texture, and I want, maybe I want them to use this blacktop-like texture for my walls, and I want the thickness to be 10, and, the opacity, everything else is fine. Maybe I do want to add a tag for a wall, and then I can, and I want my stroke to be simple, yeah, so actually probably even want this to be bigger. The more I use the tool, the thicker I make my walls. I don't know what it is. I used to be comfortable with 10% of a hex, and now I've been using 15% of a hex, and now I'm kind of like, I don't even know if 15% is wide enough. I think I need to go thicker. So, and then you can hit the plus button here. The plus button, then you can say, my wall, create, and then we can see my wall is down here. So if we hit border, we get all the things that are set up for a border, which probably needs to be revised. That's not a good percentage for a border. And then my wall, and we get back to our 18 with our white color and so forth. So that's a big look at all of the different ways to configure things in Worldographer. A few of these things are new features in 2025, particularly with the city generation settings and giving you more icons that are built into the tool, so that you can generate some of the cities in other genres right from the get-go with just the built-in icons. Of course, it does help to have the additional icons, so that you've got a lot more variety in what your houses look like and so forth. But the point is that you can generate a city pretty easily in those other styles. And we've even, we've got a couple of videos that we've done as we've been promoting the Worldographer 2025 crowdfunding that show that. So I encourage you to look at those. Again, I hope that you give the demo a try. We'll have a link to the crowdfunding page, which has a link to the demo. And if you find it will be useful for you, then by all means support it. Thanks a bunch. Bye.